All right, guys, we want to welcome you back to the Mad Maker Show. My name is Eloy. Today we have a special guest, Ray Pena from Ray Makes, and we're going to be interviewing him, his awesome builds, and just massive scale stuff. We're going to get to know a little bit more and some insight to just those crazy projects and a lot of the successes too with, well, we're going to talk about it. But before we get to Ray, I just want to mention a couple of things. Well, actually, who's out there, JP?
Who is out there? Let's quickly go out there. We got Steve Nealon from Harnell Media, Anna's Workshop, OJ Woodworking and Craft, Frankie's CNC's Woodworking Channel, Katie Dotson. You're out there, Eloy. Jake Thompson's out there. And for the minute, that's it. Oh, Sterling's out there. Tom Spillane.
Yeah.
They're all coming in now.
Oh yeah, we just started. They're getting the notification.
Yeah. John Peanut Butter and Honeybees is out there. Yeah, they're all coming in now.
Well, we'll do the. Who was that?
Bob Lee. Not tall, Nate. Oh, no, I can't see. I've got some fluff on my screen. It's defacing the. I know it's on my glasses, not on my screen. Right. Anyway, back to you at the moment, Eloy.
All right. Well,
my glasses.
We'll do a. Was it on your glasses or was it
on my glasses, not on my screen?
All right. So we'll do a recap of who's out there in a little bit here. So I want to mention a couple of things here at the outset here. One, Mad Maker Show. We interview people. This is for folks that will come in and see this or in syndication so that they know what the story is. There's a community of people that create things, different types of genres, metalworking, woodworking, computer CNCs, just everything, crafts, art in general, and then specific tools like the lathe, or people that are, doing rustic, vintage stuff, modern, fine wood, all the things you could possibly imagine. There's a community that sprung up that they do that and video. And so we try to grab these people and see what we can glean from them and interview them. But we're all interconnected, and the folks out here in the chat. And the cool thing is the chat's going to always stay there. YouTube has a feature now where the chat remains even after the fact. And that's new. Before, the chat would disappear, and then in syndication, the show would just show people referring to comments that no longer existed. Well, now that stays on. Your comments and interactions stay on indefinitely, right? So that's a cool thing. So people coming in, this is what we do, right? We interview these inspirational people, and yeah. So that's the Mad Maker Show. A couple of things I want to mention. One, next week we'll have Tony Rouleau. So that's going to be very exciting. I mean, unheard of. I have never heard him or seen him do an interview show, although we were talking. He says he's done podcasts.
Yeah, he was on our podcast on Sunday, just gone.
But never videoed. And he was?
Yeah, and he was on video.
He totally. What? That was this last Sunday?
Sunday just gone.
Oh, son of a gun, Tony! What are you doing? Are you doing like some sort of circuit run across the country, promoting some? Dang it, Rouleau. So yeah, we're gonna have Tony next week. And last thing I want to mention is that there's gonna be a challenge starting in July 1st, and it runs all the way to the end of July. It's the Plywood Portal Woodworks 2018 Plywood Challenge. Okay. And there's prizes, a bunch of prizes. And what I'll do is, real quick here, I'll present to everyone, and then I'm going to go ahead and share screen and go over to Portal's website. This is portalwoodworks.com. And if you go under Portal YouTube challenges, you'll see the different challenges that have occurred in the past and the upcoming ones. And right now we're dealing with the 2018 YouTube one sheet plywood challenge info and rules. down here. It starts July 1st until midnight, July 31st, 2018, right? So you can go in and read all the rules, right? And then there's prizes here you can see. Grand prize, $100, Amazon gift card. Second prize, Flying 9 Industries mallet, right? That's Doc Jared Hildebrandt. Third prize, $50 card, Amazon. Fourth is a 25. Fifth is a video music pack from Rockin' Woodworks. That's me. Runner-up prizes, Portal Woodworks t-shirt and a Harneal Media t-shirt. So very cool. You take a sheet of plywood and you build something out of it. But read the rules so you know exactly what the story is. Let's stop sharing and let's stop presenting. Okay. So to you, JP.
It's actually given me a bit of an idea, David's challenge. What was the name of that big blue guy? That David had he wasn't very good friends with him. That cardboard cutout.
The cardboard cutout that he
massacred. Of a better way of putting it. I could do a sculptural portrait of that.
Oh, that'd be funny. and then
burn it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm Jamie from JP Woodwork. Twitter and Instagram is JP_Woodwork. Website is jp-woodwork.com. I'm 1/5 or 1/6 of the Makers International podcast now. Website found at makersinternationalpodcast.com. Both websites are sponsored by Steve at Harneal Media, found at harnealmedia.com. I'm sat here drinking out of my Minecrafting mug. Equally found at I like to make cups.com or mancraftingtm.com. Firstly, I want to thank Doc for sitting in for us. Last week I was away visiting the other half's family, so I couldn't attend. Secondly, Pat Lapp has just released a challenge to the maker community to turn a mini goblet in 5 minutes or less, and to beat his time, which I believe was 4 minutes 45. So if you want to try and beat his time and put out a video, go for it. It'll be a lot of fun. Just be safe and wear a face shield. Don't end up like Pat and breaking your front teeth. All right, that's about it for the time being.
All right, dude. Well, welcome back to the show after your one show hiatus. And so yeah, check those challenges out. I might be doing the lathe one as well. You know, we'll see. That's a steep. Actually, our guest here has quite a bit of experience on the lathe. We're going to talk to Ray right now. So I'd like to welcome Ray of Ray Makes.
How are you guys doing?
What's up, dude? Thank you so much for doing the show.
That's my pleasure. My pleasure. We've had a chance to talk a few times before, and it's always a good time.
Yeah, dude. I was stoked when you said yes. We met. Just a couple of things. We met.
Correct. I said, "Hells yes."
We met through the I Like to Make Stuff group on Facebook. I saw your posts there and went. You know how there's a lot of makers and a lot of videos and a lot of content and a lot of stuff, and I went and checked out your post. I think that the first one that I saw of yours, it's funny. I went and saw you. You had a challenge yourself, actually, or some sort of competition thing where it was like steampunked lamps, like see what you could do and create. And that was my first, like, you know, oh, that's badass. And then the next thing I see, you're building like a freaking boat, and then you're like climbing up machines and freaking it's just massive stuff. But is that fair? Is that fair to the description, more or less?
That's a pretty quick synopsis, cross section of the kind of stuff that I'm doing. Yeah, I would say yeah. That's
All right, so tell us a little bit about your past. Give us a little bit of and then we can break it down. But just give us where you're from, where you're at, a little bit of that, a little bit of history.
Yeah, as you know through our conversations, that I'm originally from Miami, not too far from where you are now,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm glad I'm not there anymore.
It's
It is
super
just
hot
so hot.
today.
Yeah, it's so hot. I don't miss it at all. As a kid, I remember, waking up and it might have been, 45, 50 degrees, Christmas morning at like 6 in the morning. And then by 9 o'clock, it was 80. And by noon, it was 95. I don't miss that at all. But, it was interesting growing up down there. You got a lot of exposure to all different kinds of things. And I think that's where my desire to make stuff started, because we were a small family with very little. So the few things that you had, you ended up making yourself. So I've been making stuff since I was a kid, and it started. I'll tell you when it started. You remember when you used to buy trash bags? They used to have twist ties. Of course, they don't have them anymore. But trash bags used to come with twist ties in the box, and they used to come with 10 times more twist ties than you needed. So everybody always had a drawer full of all these extra twist ties. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Twist ties, dude.
Twist ties.
You're ancient.
Yeah, I'm old.
Twist ties.
Twist ties. Yeah. I used to make like tables and chairs and wardrobes and stuff for my sister for her Barbies, using the twist ties like sheets of plywood. That was my first building material, was twist ties.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. And then somewhere around 15, 16, I saw. I'll never forget. It was Roy Underhill. Everybody knows who Roy Underhill is.
Yeah.
I saw some videos on public broadcast of Roy Underhill working on a spring pole lathe, with the pedal, and it's going up and down and real slow. And that was the moment. If you have to pinpoint one moment when things changed, it was watching Roy Underhill on public broadcast station. Down there is Channel 2, I think, is what it was. And I said, that is it. I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to turn pieces of wood from logs and branches into useful things. And that's what started. It was 16, and I built my first lathe. And then a week later, I took it apart because it just wasn't good enough. And I found plans in a fine woodworking magazine, and I built a bigger lathe. And then I ended up, about a week before I sold it, last year before, I ended up making a quick video of some pictures that I had lying around of that lathe. But yeah, that lathe I had over 20 years, and it worked very well. And that's what started the whole down the rabbit hole of making stuff, was that Roy Underhill and that first lathe.
Yeah, I remember that. So I did an interview of you inside of a vlog on my channel. You had sent me just chunks of metal, gear, huge chunk of brass, and you called it the secret box and stuff, and see what you can make from. It's funny because I still have that piece of brass, and I'm not made anything. No, I've wanted to cut into it and use it. I've thought such crazy things, but I always remember you said one thing. That's heavy duty brass, dude. It's gonna take a while to work at it.
Yeah, that's 954 bronze is what that is.
Bronze.
It's 954 bronze, so it has aluminum in it, and it makes it tough. When you start cutting on it, you'll see the minute you start cutting, you're gonna wear out your tools very quickly.
So within that video, during that exchange, we did an interview and it's quite a great interview, dude, because you really go into the details, and it was very, it's a very good interview. It's within I can always extract it too and use it in other parts too. But you did show pictures. I think you showed pictures, or maybe we talked about it. And your first, where you built that lathe, you're in a small cramped room here in Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, that well, it's a phenomenon that only occurs down there when you have a small room that you kind of enclose or you add on to your existing house. They call them a Florida room, and I don't know why. I always found that weird, even living down there, that everybody had these rooms that they named after the state, and there was really nothing special about it because everybody had one. So it was a little Florida room that was maybe 11 foot by 4.5 foot, like Jamie's workshop. I mean, roughly about that size. That was my first workshop when I was 16, and unfortunately, that was the entry room into the house. So you always had to walk through the workshop to get into the living room every time you came home. So if I was turning and everything, there'd be chips flying everywhere. My sister hated it. It was always a mess. My sister and I lived together at the time. And yeah, it was always terrible because you always had to walk through that room. And the lathe was 8 foot long, so it actually protruded into the doorway slightly. So you had like an 18-inch wide gap because I had a cabinet on the other side. So you had this 18-inch wide gap between the cabinet and the lathe to get into the house. So it was always a pain with that. The lathe, honestly, I made the lathe too big, but it worked out great.
But you built it from scratch.
Yeah. There was a set of plans that I found in fine wood. I can't remember who designed it, and I made some modifications for my purposes. But there was plans in there, and they published it. And of course, in my video on YouTube, I have a link to that where I offer those plans available for free. Yeah, there was plans, and the first lathe I did completely from scratch, and I used it for about a week, maybe two, and I realized that I got it wrong. So, a 16-year-old kid who'd never done any wood turning, and to build that first lathe, I had to buy my first drill, and I had to buy my first router, and I had to buy my first saw. So there's a lot of firsts with that first lathe. And since I didn't know any better, I built it and I used it, and within a week, I'm like, you know what? It's not right. I got it wrong. I got to do it better. And that's when I looked and I found those plans. And then I built the second lathe, which I ended up using for 20 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for the super chat. Be happy, John. JP, if you could link them, if possible. Appreciate that, dude. I shouted John out in my last vlog there. There's some sort of connection there with, I'm not even going to say, peanut butter. Thank you, John. I appreciate it, dude. So, Ray, you studied architecture, engineering.
Yep.
But you tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I guess I was about 20 or 21, somewhere in that ballpark, and I was actually studying computer science. And I remember sitting in the computer lab, doing all these instructions. And at the time, we were doing Fortran. I don't even know if they use Fortran anymore. Did Pascal and COBOL, but that class was Fortran, and I was sitting in the computer lab, and I'm like, what am I doing in front of this computer? Giving it instructions in a meaningless world, and I just had this this existential breakdown. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I got up from the middle of the computer lab. I didn't even finish that class. I just got up and I left, and I went down and I said, you know what? I don't want to do computer science anymore. I want to study architecture. And I ended up having to make that class up in the summertime, but I just switched. It was a switch that went off one day, and I couldn't put my finger on why, but I just could not sit in that computer lab in front of that screen anymore.
Well, thank goodness. I don't want to embarrass you with what I'm gonna say, but I have to say you are a top-notch maker, like top-notch, like on massive scales and expansive in different directions, be it machining, metalwork. I mean, you're like top of the heap. I'm just gonna put that out there for the folks that.
You're getting carried away now. Now you're getting carried away.
Well, no. you're being humble, and I get it, and it's a little bit rich to put that out and take that in. But it's true. If you go to your channel, if you guys have not checked out Ray's channel, and really you look at all the, and we're gonna get into that. But there's some crazy stuff going on. I mean, from boats to just massive machines that you guys overhaul, you run. So tell us, you're from Miami. We can relate. There's Javi out there is from Miami as well, and we kind of relate the environment, the heat, and that. But I can hear my echo. Is there a way for you to lower the volume on that? Testing live. Okay, it's a little bit better. I can settle. So how'd you end up? Because you don't live in Miami no more. Tell us about that. How'd you end up leaving Miami?
Well, pretty simple. I joined the Army. That's where it started. I was right after that episode in college. I don't know what got into me. I changed my major, and I felt like I had to do something different. I was working 3 jobs and going to school, and just things were not lining up the way they should. And I felt like I had to do a drastic change. And I went to the recruiter, and I joined the Army. I know it seems drastic, but I would say that was probably the best decision I made, because it broke me off from everything that was holding me back. You know, it's when you grow up around family, you always want to be around your family and all that. Not that they were bad or anything. It's just that you want to stay there. So, you know, working and school and family, there were all these things that were together that I felt that wouldn't let me explore and do something completely off the wall. And so I had this thing that I just had to do something different. So I joined the Army, and it introduced me to, obviously, a lot of travel, you know, not by choice, but by necessity. You end up doing some traveling, saw the world, and this little sphere of the world that was South Florida became obvious that it was too small. It was too small a sphere. And I ended up living in several different places, several different states, other countries. And the reality is that no one place feels like home. And anywhere can be home. And through the course of, you know, different decisions, and I, you know, going to college and all that business, ended up becoming an architect. And I was back in South Florida just before the crash of the housing market. So if you don't know the way it works with architecture and construction, you could be working on a project as an architect that will not be completed until the next 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So when the economy is slowing down or tanking, the very first thing that stops is future projects. So nobody's looking 5 years down the line when the economy is not good right now. And as an architect, that is terrible, because that's what you're doing. You're always planning for the future. So when you're planning for the future and nobody wants to invest in planning for the future, you are in trouble. So it was very clear back in 2006 that there was going to be, or 2005, that there was going to be a problem. And which is why when people became surprised, oh, look at this, the housing bubble burst. Oh my goodness, it was not a surprise. It was clearly telegraphed. And it was into 2005. I said, I have to get out of South Florida again. And I found a job in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, a job that I kept until the day I left. And I was an architect in Baltimore, Maryland. And that was that big jump, you know, that big 1,000-mile leap that I made. And there I met my wife. And it just turns out, by chance, by pure coincidence, that my wife's family business was a machine shop. A machine shop that they've been working on for 40 years. So it's been around a while, and they are in their 70s, and they said, you know, we want to retire. Would you guys be interested in taking it over? So we came along and like, yeah, we don't know anything about the machine shop business, but we're eager to learn. So we both left our careers as architects and moved a few hours over here to Delaware and started learning about machining. And within 6 months, we started another company, and we started making these custom wheels that we ended up shipping all over the world. And things went well. And that was I would say 6 or 7 years ago. I'm not exactly sure when that was, but probably 6 or 7 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I decided to make a YouTube channel, and that was a fluke. And what happened is I had put up one video on Facebook about that big blue lathe that I built, and I just, as you know, people were looking at it and say, "Oh, you got an interesting thing. We want to know more. We want to know more." So I just threw up a video, not thinking anything about it, and that video had like 15,000 views in the first 4 hours. I'm like, that's weird. I didn't think it was this interesting. Why are people that interested? And someone suggested, you know what? You should probably put that on YouTube. And that was that seed. In about, I think this is my 3rd year with the YouTube channel. And that was that seed. So if you look at my very first video, was that same video. The lathe. I just put that one up as my first video just to see how it would do. And, you know, the rest kind of all fell in. So my channel really is just documenting the stuff that I'm already doing, the stuff that I've always been doing. Just in the last few years, I'm like, you know what? Let's make a video instead. On top of making the thing, let's also make a video. And that's how it kind of ended up happening as a weird kind of organic progression of events.
Yeah, because your videos are, every time I go to your channel and see like whatever the latest, you know, adventure that you're involved in, it's just it's crazy because you could be at home. I like that about your videos. You could be either at home in your workshop, and you go into your shed where you line, you know, for installation, and you're working on a portion of what might be later or something bigger.
Yeah.
Or you could be in your machine shop, you know, in massive scale situations, or in somebody else's shop repairing their massive, you know, machines or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like that sort of, the, you know, you never know what's going to go down. So tell us a little bit about, and by the way, for you folks out there that know Ray or don't know Ray, either way, if you have questions, feel free to write them in just a little bit here. We'll have JP, if you feel kind to share with us, see what Ray answers.
Yeah, I've got a few questions when you're ready.
Okay, so we need you to put on headphones because I get to yeah, man.
Okay.
Because it's very psychedelic, and although I like that.
We could end up doing a quartet band on our own.
Maybe you're the guy with the echo, not Ray.
No, it's not me. I've got headphones.
It has to be me. Oh, it's always me, by the way. That's how it works. always the guilty party.
Always in the put, just the depth that varies.
All right, how's that? Is that better?
Much better.
Oh, yeah, great. Dude. So, boy, I was going to ask something, but since I went into that psychedelic trip, I'm like flying through the nebulas of space and time right now. Where was I at, Jake?
I said I had some questions when you're ready.
No, I know that part. I know what was I on the precipice to actually ask them.
I know you were saying about closing the show.
I got it. Tell us a little bit about, and it's been a few months, maybe a year. So tell us a little. You decided to build a boat.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know about that one, but prior we were talking. You said, Eloy, you should try and build. Well, you did say try and build like a boat canoe / thing out of plywood. But before that, you have something that you built out of plastic, or can you?
Oh yeah, plexiglass. I built I think got three or four. I don't remember. I think it's 3 or 4 boats that I built out of. I'm sorry, not plexiglass. It's Lexan. For those who are not familiar with the difference between plexiglass and Lexan, plexiglass is a trade name for acrylic. Acrylic is the generic name of the material, and Lexan is the trade name for polycarbonate. And the two materials look similar, but they are obviously worlds apart if you've messed with them at all. So if you're going to be bending plastic, polycarbonate is the way to go. So I've got these boats that I built out of polycarbonate, out of single sheets. And that, believe it or not, is an idea that started back in 2002, 2003, somewhere in that ballpark. While I was in college, I was going to school at FAU in Fort Lauderdale. And if you're familiar with Fort Lauderdale, or even if you're not, it is crisscrossed with all kinds of canals all over the place. Canals just east, west, north, south, everywhere. You have the intracoastal, you've got the New River, you got water everywhere. So while I was in college, I'm like, you know what? I'd like to have, it'd be nice to have like a little one-man personal sized boat that I can just throw in the back of the pickup truck and with a electric motor, so I can just cruise the canals, you know, take a relaxing day away from everything. You just cruise the canals or the river in a little one-man boat. But going to school and working at night and everything, it was an impossible task to sit and build one. And I didn't know anything about boat building, so I was looking at plans, and it became very clear that plans are elaborate, and the boat would take 6 months to build it. So fast forward, you know, 10, almost 15 years, I find myself in the shop where I can just make anything. So the problem with being able to make anything is that you got to think of something, one or two things within this big old realm of anything, so you can start making.
You know what?
Yeah.
I just want to draw that point, and like, you know, that's a very good point. If there's so many options, and I'm not speaking from the woodworking side, but like with the music and like the different types of plugins, for instance, you have so many options you could throw into a song that you end up like, what the hell do I do? You know, there's too much. So you have to limit yourself. You have to focus. Tell us.
Absolutely. And in architecture, you know, whenever you took on a project, new projects are intimidating and scary, and it's called, you know, fear of the blank page. Because when you get a big blank page, it's anything and everything you can possibly imagine can go down on that piece of paper. And because it can be anything, it is hard to draw the first line. Getting that first line on paper is tough, because once you do that first one, you're committed. So of all these possibilities, you got to draw that first line and bring yourself down into a level of commitment, but you got to have the idea first. So this boat idea, I ended up with a bunch of, you know, you saw the big picture of thinking about boats. Now I'm in the shop, and I had a pile of 1/16 inch thick, 60 thousandths thick polycarbonate left over from the wheels that I had been manufacturing for the sulky racing industry. And your sales had kind of started slowing down, and I had all these sheets, about 10 sheets or so. I said, you know what? I've seen these videos on these one sheet plywood boats, which are, you know, they're interesting, but they start with taking a big sheet and cutting it. Take a big sheet and cut it into little pieces, and then you reassemble it, you glue it all back. And I was thinking, I've got this material that I can bend so easily. Where can I bend it to make a boat from this one sheet without cutting anything off of it at all? And of course, the problem is always you got to take these open ends from the outside of the sheet, and they all have to be facing up. So that first boat, I did it as an experiment. I did it right here in the living room. Even though I had the access to the shop, I'm like, I got to figure out how I'm going to do it first. So I did it the hard way, the same way anybody would do it with any shop, without, forget the machine shop. I did it right here in the living room with a 2x4 and my wife stepping on the plastic to hold it in place while I bent it. I mean, it was insane. It was rustic.
That's awesome.
So that first boat was built rustic, and I showed, it was done before I had a YouTube channel, so all I had were still pictures. So I built it, and no one was more surprised than me that it actually worked. You know, here's a boat. I'm like, man, this thing is small. I don't think it's going to hold me. And I was surprised. And then after that, I discovered Paul Elkins. You're familiar with Paul? He's tinkerer, inventor out in the Northwest, and he made a series of folded boats out of coroplast, but we call it, corrugated plastic.
Yeah.
So coroplast would be a brand name. He made all these boats out of basically essentially the same way. So he and I arrived at the same point, because if you look at it, they are bent very similarly. It's not identical, but it's really close. And so he and I arrived at the same point, but I will have to tell you, he arrived there first. It's kind of like, the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell got there first, but there was another guy working on it at the same time.
Right.
He got there first, and he beat me by a couple of years. He definitely was the guy to come up with the idea first, but I came up with the same idea independently, not knowing that it had already been done. And then I ended up making a few more in different versions just to kind of even it out. And I've got a box here with about 3 dozen different folded boat designs that could all be made in the same fashion. So that's how it started. This desire, to have a tiny little one-man personal-sized boat to cruise the canals and intercoastals of Fort Lauderdale. I end up, once I had enough time to develop the idea, sit and think about it, doing it here in Delaware. And because it's made out of clear plastic, I cannot tell you how many times people would stand at the edge of the water waiting for catastrophe. They were waiting to see something go wrong, but me flip this thing over because they couldn't believe that this was a thing. And I've had people ask me, they would ask me what this odd-looking, transparent, boat-shaped object, what was it?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, what is this thing? I'm like, it's a boat. It doesn't look like a boat? They go, yeah, it looks like a boat, but it can't be a boat. What is that thing? I'm like, well, stick around, you'll see. And from a distance, it looks like you're just sitting on the water. It doesn't look like you're in anything. It looks very surreal. Like, what's going on over there? What is that? Is that a guy sitting on the what? And
can people see that on your Instagram or your Facebook page?
No, I've got it. It's all on my YouTube channel. At the time, the whole Instagram is very new to me, probably within the last year or so.
Yeah.
And on my Facebook, it's just personal Facebook. I don't have a Ray Makes Facebook page yet, but it's in the works. So the website, as you saw, is under construction, and I'm going to organize things a little bit better. So if you're looking for those kind of projects, you'll be able to sort through and find those kind of things a little bit easier.
Well, we're going to get into also, because you have a branch that veered off in another completely totally different way. You started creating fidget spinners in a complex, mechanical gear way, but we don't want to touch on that yet. And Dan the Maker Man there's a little bit of him involved in the story where he requested. Well, we're going to talk about that, but let's go to JP because I think there's questions.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. One of them was actually involving the spinner idea, the spinners, but I'll leave that one out for the time being. The first one comes from Dan the Maker Man. He said, "What is the favorite tool in your machine shop versus your home shop?"
Yeah, I don't really have a favorite tool. I gotta say, it's all they're kind of all equal to me because they all do different jobs and they do those jobs well. So it's very difficult for me to say, oh, this is my favorite one or this other is my favorite one. But I will say the one in the main shop that I use the most, only because of its simplicity. You can come up with an idea, draw it quick, and immediately cut it out. Would be the water jet. The water jet will lets you get from idea to part in a record amount of time. You can do it so quickly that you can actually go through several iterations in minutes. You're like, oh no, that's a little bit off. Let me tweak it a little smaller, a little bit bigger. Let me change this. Does it fit? No, it doesn't fit. Here's what we went wrong. Make the change. So you can go through 10 versions in an hour, and of course you're cutting it in metal. So for its versatility and the amount that it is used, if I had to say favorite, I would say in the main shop would be the water jet. but it really isn't a favorite. It's just one of the tools in the toolbox. At the home shop, that is actually, while there isn't a favorite, there is clearly a tool that is the most useful. And for me, it is like the most important tool. It's not the favorite, but it's the most important tool because of its usefulness. And to me, that's the workbench. Without the workbench, nothing else happens. So not really thought of as a tool, but without it, it's the most indispensable tool and the one that is easily overlooked. So again, not my favorite, but I would say the one that I use every day without question would be the workbench.
Fair play. Fair play. Got a question from John from Be Happy Woodwork and Honeybees. Says, how big was that machine that's just been installed?
That's a big one. That machine came on a trailer by itself. It's 39 feet long, almost 40 feet long. That main portion weighs 70,000 pounds, and to that we have to add all the parts that were taken off. So completed, that machine is about 90,000 pounds, and we had to crane it into the building. It was those guys did a great job. By the time they arrived to when they left, they arrived around 7 in the morning. They left at 3 in the afternoon, and that machine was in place. And that includes all their setup time and all the breakdown time. They did a fantastic job. But yeah, it was a big machine. The table on it, which is how you judge these machines, measures 62 inches wide and 162 inches long, which is massive. Your average Bridgeport is probably 10 inches wide, maybe 12 inches wide, by 32 to 40 inches long. So you can imagine it's orders of magnitude much larger than a Bridgeport. And the only other large milling machine I have is the Haas VF9, and that has a 38-inch wide by 84-inch wide a long bed. So it is just about 4 times the size of my next largest machine.
Wow. Okay. Sterling Davis says, what is Ray's big project he wants to do, and what's the time frame to get it done?
My big project, that's a good question. I do have a project that I am planning, and that is for a large format 3D printer. And it's funny that this question will come up because the reason that I'm even pursuing that, and by large format I mean that I want to print 4 foot wide by 8 foot long, and that unit, that obviously it's the size of a sheet of plywood. The reason that unit is important is because that's the size limitation of the boats that I build. Those same plastic boats that we were talking about, there are, like I said, I have a box that has 36 different designs, and I love the idea of being able to print these different designs in industrial plastics and put it, set it to do overnight, come in the next morning, take it off, and throw it in the water. So that's my next big project. The time frame is probably, we're looking at about a year and a half, just to get it. Right now I'm looking at all of my mechanical options. I've narrowed down my electronics options. So pretty soon, I would say within the next few months, you might see the frame taking shape. But it's a long haul project that is going to probably take about a year, maybe a little bit more. Nice.
We've got another one from, it's similar to Dan the Maker Man's question. It's a question from Doc. He says, what is your favorite machine to run?
Favorite machine to run? First of all, I'd like to say hi to Doc and thank him. What you guys don't know is that a little over a year ago, Doc sent me a motor, an electric motor, through our I Like to Make Stuff web Facebook page. He sent me an electric motor that I still have, and I have to mount it to the lathe. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. But thank you, Doc. I appreciate that. I just wanted to let that out there. My favorite tool to operate, it's again, I don't have a favorite. The milling machines they have their own purpose, and they do well. The laser, the water jet, the saw, they're all equal. I will say that the saw is one of those machines that gets very little attention, only because you use it all the time. But any piece of material that comes in your shop, the first place it has to go to, the saw. It always gets cut to smaller pieces. And there's something quite satisfying because it's very fast. You take a piece of material and you're committed. Right or wrong, you are committed to that. So you better be right.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I would have to say that to operate from sheer satisfaction, that instant gratification, the saw is one of those tools. And of course, saws take many different shapes, and I think that they're all equal. You know, they all have their own purpose and function, and they do that job well. That's what makes them so satisfying, because you can't use a bandsaw when the chainsaw is the right saw for the job.
Exactly. Yeah. He's saying you're not going to cut down a log with a handsaw.
Yeah. Not these days.
Especially if you've got a chainsaw.
Right. Yeah.
Right, we've got one more final question. I don't know if Eloy wants to go through this one at the moment. It's from Julian Martinez. He says, "Ray, how did you come up with your spinner ideas?"
No, Julian, you're gonna mess the whole thing up, dude. That's my entry.
Sequence.
That's my entry into the next darn phase of the.
That's why I left it till last.
You know, Julian, he just comes in and
every time, every
freaking time, dude. We'll answer it now. Jeez, Julian, man. So this will answer Julian's question. So I just want to mention this before going into the spinners. Also on your channel, not only do you have, you know, repairs. I like that you do how you do your channel, because there's always something interesting and different. You're telling us your story of each thing that you're involved in, and just, oh, I came up with this idea, I'm going to try this idea. Or you'll visit like a maker fair or some sort of old shop, and you go and visit and you show people what, you know, traditionally what, or you'll go to the maker fair and show, you know, what 3D printing, like different size and lasers. And so you give us a lot of different things in your, so it's a really fun, like I can't say enough about it. I don't want to keep embarrassing you. But another thing that you did was all of a sudden you started making spinners.
Yep.
I want to touch upon what Julian asked, how you got started, and then I have a couple of other little questions. Don't mention oh, screw it. So at one point you should mention how Dan the Maker Man came up and asked, hey, why don't you try doing, you know, this? Explain all that to us, and then we'll touch on the China situation.
Oh man, yeah.
and the reason, unless you don't want to, but
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Because it goes to it really reveals. I mean, we're makers, you know. We all have different, you know, focuses and stuff, but it shows the theft of it. It's a really striking thing. And there's other stuff like videos being grabbed, but let's do your thing. Tell us.
So the spinner thing, and I will be honest, I'd never heard of it. I didn't know anything about it. And I would say it was about October of 2016. I was contacted. As a matter of fact, I was at a maker fair in, I think it was Reston, Virginia. I have friends in DC, and together we do a podcast. And we were there kind of advertising the podcast. And whenever we do that, I bring a bunch of stuff from the shop. So people see things they've never seen before, and they start asking questions, and you kind of engage them. So they're very good leaders. You know, people will see that, hey, they get drawn to your table, look at all these weird things that nobody else has anything like that. And then we discuss the podcast and, you know, that kind of thing. So at one of those, the one at Reston, Virginia, a gentleman from Revolve Makers, he came up to me and says, hey, you know, our company, Revolve Makers, is We just finished a Kickstarter campaign, which was funded in like 10 days. We finished this Kickstarter campaign for a hand spinner, and we're looking for a machine shop to run the parts. And my spinner, I don't know what that is. Fidget spinner, I don't know what that is. So he says, well, I got one right here. He pulls it out of his pocket. It's made out of bronze, and he showed it to me. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, send me your files the same way I treat any other customer. Send me the files. I'll take a look at them and send you a quote. And then, of course, it was for 200 units, and we did them. I think in 3 weeks or so, we did them all. They had all kinds of.
I wanna halfway stop you just to let you know. Yeah. I'm gonna, while you're telling us the story, I'm gonna pop up Real Gear Spinners on Facebook, because there's lots of photographs.
Yeah.
And just so that they can visually see while you're, and then you can stop us or stop me and tell me, move up to that picture or whatever you want, but at least, you know, there's that, okay?
Sure.
All right.
So they, you know, I made 200 units of this for this company, and it got me curious. I'm like, what is this thing? I mean, these things were expensive to make. Why would anybody spend the money to make these? I don't get it. So I had to look it up and you know, find out what it was all about. And oh yeah, during the process of making their it was the Alpha Spinner. During the process of making that, they wanted documented, so it was a perfect opportunity to just make a video about it and put it on the channel. Well, it quickly became one of the most popular videos that I had put up. Didn't go what we would call viral, but it was obviously very popular. I'm like, that is weird. Why is this so popular? And if you go, never mind, it's not important. So I ended up right there, that in the upper corner of my logo, not the logo, the further over, the one for the channel, right? Yeah, that one. I had this very gear was sitting on my desk for over a year, and I said, well, you know what, this thing I could probably turn this thing into a spinner. Let me bore it out, put in a bronze insert, bore it out, and put a bearing in there, and face it off. And if you look very closely, the teeth have a different finish. The teeth have been bead blasted. And I just, you know, out of curiosity, just to do it, I just said, well, I made these. I got some bearings around. Let me go ahead and turn this gear, an everyday average industrial gear, sitting on my desk for a year, and turned it into a fidget spinner. Well, things went crazy. I cannot tell you how many people wanted to buy this one. And I'm like, you know, I only made one. I just made it for myself. It's not really for sale. It's not a big deal. But that got the wheels going. Why would they be so interested in this? And I started looking around, and the reason they were so interested is because there weren't any fidget spinners like this made from industrial parts. They were all very carefully and well designed, and then manufactured specifically for the purpose to be this hand fidget spinner. This was the first time that somebody took an industrial part and actually went the other way and say, oh, we're going to take something that's already manufactured industrially and let's make a spinner out of it. And because it was the first one, there are other gear ones, but they're clearly not real gears. They were designed for that purpose, and they don't really function as gears. So this one right here was what started me thinking about gears. And in fact, this video on YouTube is called the Real Gear Spinner, and which is where the name comes from, Real Gear Spinners, because of this first one made out of an actual gear. And I had these materials left over from different jobs, like the gear rod, and I took and sliced those into smaller gears that you can see on some of these photographs. And I made a prototype of a 3-gear spinner. So it had a center gear, which is the sun gear, and the revolving gears around it, which were planets. And when I submitted the very first one as a video project, that is when things went nuts. And that was probably in December of 2016. And it went so crazy, people were bombarding me. And I don't mean 1 or 2 messages, I mean 300 messages a day. Where can I buy it? How much is it? Can I pay you now? Can I reserve one? How many are you gonna make? I gotta have it, I gotta have it. And the market demand was such that it kind of pushed me over. Instead of making this as a video project or as an experiment in as an experimental exercise in making a geared hand spinner. It pushed me over into producing it for resale. And of that 3-gear version, I must have made 3 or 4 separate generations, totaling maybe 300 units. And then another individual who purchased one of those 3-gear spinners sent me a message and said, "Hey, I love this thing. Can you make one with 9 gears?" And
Is
my
it this
initial,
one?
yeah, that was the testing phase, just to see how everything would lay out. So I designed that brass plate, and it does have kind of a Victorian flavor to it. That plate was probably the 10th version of the design. And then this was just a photograph so he could see how the progress was evolving. You know, he asked me, can it be made? And honestly, I didn't think it could. I didn't think it could.
Really?
I didn't think so. So I had to do a computer model through SolidWorks SolidWorks allows you to see how parts move and interact with each other. So I made a 3D model and I let this gear spin, and the model said that it was possible. The model says, yes, we can do this. So I ended up sending him a message. Like, yeah, you know, 3D model says it's possible. And he says, great. How much is it going to be? And I said, I really don't know. I don't know how much it's going to be, but it's going to be a lot because I'm not going to make just one. By the time I'm finished, I'm probably going to have 8 or 10 versions of it before I get it right. And he said, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Before I knew it, he just sent me money. He just sent me some money. He says, go ahead and get started. So he became a benefactor quite by accident. He had to have this. He says, go ahead, take your time, make it however you want, figure it out. And he says, if it turns out to be more, just let me know, and I'll pay you more. And it was that gentleman who commissioned the 9-gear. That 9-gear, once it was made, people went even more bonkers. That video has had 900,000 views, and it did so very quickly. Way beyond what I thought anybody. For me, this is just another thing. I was making another thing. I don't personally get excited when I make stuff because it's all day. You're making stuff all day, and it's interesting, and I enjoy doing it, but it's not super exciting because I've been staring at this thing in different versions of it for 60 days. So when people got excited about it, it was a little bit weird, a little bit unusual. I don't get that kind of excitement. I've never seen anyone get so excited about anything that I've ever made. When you work in an industry, it's you got to make a part to do a job, and it goes in the machine, and nobody sees it again until they need another part. So in general, people don't get that excited about it. Excuse me. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, no. I wanted to not to interrupt, but to go to briefly to the was it the Batman? What was the thing? Because
yes,
yeah.
During that time, Dan the Maker Man saw my videos, and I was familiar with Dan's channel, although we had not had any interaction before. And and I'm not sure how he found me, and I don't remember which project it was that I saw of Dan's that got me involved with his channel. Because during that time there was like all these discoveries, you know, a lot of different channels, a lot of different people, and I'm noticing all these interesting things going on. So there was a lot of stuff happening. So I don't recall the exact thing. But Dan, on one of my videos, and I don't remember which one, it might have been.
I think it was Batman. No.
Well, he on one of those fidget spinner videos, he asked me, "Hey, you should." He really didn't ask. He almost kind of instructed, "Hey, you should make you should make a Batman one," and or something to that effect. Can you make one, or you should make one, or something like that. And I said, "Yeah, I think I can do that." And that was it. That was all of the interaction that we had. And about 2 weeks later, I went ahead and had one produced. And I made a Batman one, and it was actually quite terrible because by that time I didn't understand how to get the center of gravity of the spinner. So most of the time I can design stuff, you know, seat of the pants, go cut it, make it, get it working. But these things ended up being much more complicated than I thought, particularly if you have an asymmetrical design. So from that point on, I started modeling it in, 3D model and figuring out the exact centroid of that part, center of gravity of that part. So then I can put the bearing right there at that point. And that's how it started. So that first Batman that the video is made out of was actually unbalanced. I mean, I thought it was interesting either way, just to be able to do it because nobody had done one like that. And then after that, I started getting a lot of inquiries. Anytime I came up with another thing, I just, the messages, it was almost overwhelming.
I just want to say, and like just for the record, and I think it's been said before, but Dan had mentioned, dude, can you do that? And you said, yeah, let's try that. And then you came up with it. And then Dan made one.
Yes.
And then your video and Dan's video of that, they're like the only ones, was freaking shooting up, the ring.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys came to me and you said, Eloy, do a fidget spinner.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
So you said, Eloy, do a fidget. I said, okay, fine. And so you guys, you're doing like these streamlined stuff and all this. And I come out with this action figure scale.
Oh, it was huge. Yeah.
Stormtrooper with the bearing. The bearing's in the middle of his stomach. It's got a laser for a dowel and a gun. And so it's like it's like some of those. It's like one of those toys you'd find at the border, like little piñata stuff. And so you have to spin it. It's the most hilarious freaking thing. And so you guys were like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah, like I didn't think you'd go in that direction, honestly. I thought it was interesting, and when you were building it, you don't really see the scale of it. Like if you're just watching this video, you're like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how this is going to turn out. And then it's like 18 inches. I'm like, whoa, that thing is.
Oh man, I'm so embarrassed about because you guys were, and in my mind, I'm thinking this is brilliant stuff. It's a stormtrooper. It's in Tarja, incidentally, but
it's beautiful.
So, anyways, long story short, continue with it. I'm glad that I participated in the history of that in my insane, kooky way. Disaster.
Did it work out well though? Did the video do well?
No, not really. I mean, people like Star Wars, but not really. I should have been streaming.
Were they nasty though?
No, it's
not really.
It's like a thing this big, with the gun and the laser.
Yeah.
You're doing calculated, measurements.
Center of gravity.
It's just it's an embarrassing. I'm glad I did it because it's one of those things that you can look back on. But my goodness, what the hell was I?
Honestly, here's the thing. I love the way it came out. As a fidget spinner is a failure, clearly, but the part. Forgetting about the fidget spinner. Forget about the fidget spinner. The Stormtrooper was very nice. I did like that. And if you want to send it to me, you could do that. I'll take it.
Yeah, the Stormtrooper, it was nice. It's just that in the context of what you guys were trying to help me. You said, Eloy, put one out, do it because it's happening. Yeah. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, let's. And I
marionette spinner. That's
I could have put strings on it, and it would have been. I thought it appropriate to mention that I had a participation part in this whole thing.
That was around the same time. Absolutely, yeah. I remember that clearly.
What can I tell you? But so continue with. Actually, did you with the Batman thing? You did. Did you finish that bit? Because I want to go also into what happened a little bit during that time as well with. It being snagged, your idea.
Yeah. So the Batman thing, I made those on the. They were unbalanced and asymmetrical, and there was a first attempt at that, and I never meant them for sale. But anytime I did something like that, people were just piling on all these messages, and that was the very first time in the history of making things that I actually felt overwhelmed. And it wasn't the making; it was all of these people. I mean, there was a time I was getting 500 messages a day. Sometimes I would spend all, because everybody wants an answer now, I would spend all night, just stayed up all night answering all the messages. Some of them led to sales, but I hate the idea of somebody sending you a message or a question about something and you don't get back to them, which is why I always try to answer everybody that leaves a message on my channel, because nobody, I don't like it. Nobody likes to be just left unanswered. So I try to get to that. But that was the first time I actually felt overwhelmed making stuff, and it was because of all of this interest that I've never seen before, never been in that position where anybody or so many people wanted a thing that I made, because I've been making stuff for a long time, and it doesn't, to me, it seems normal everyday stuff, and no one's ever had that kind of, or I should say, I've never had that kind of market response to anything I've ever made.
And it was so natural too, right? It was such a natural, like you were just, okay, so here's a different, and it was such a natural thing to fall into, and then the surprise is that, right?
Oh yeah, I was totally unprepared for it, but in typical fashion, I grabbed the bull by the horns, and I produced as much as I could. And there's probably in all of those, I think I sold like 600 fidget spinners of all different price ranges, I would say. I've had 2 that were returned at a 600, which is pretty good ratio, I would say.
Yeah, it's fantastic, dude. I mean, come on. Yeah.
So yeah, somebody bought the one of those Batmans. They had to have it, but they never bothered looking at the video or reading anything I said or even hearing any of the words I said, that it was unbalanced. And it was a gentleman, a collector that only collects one-off spinners in China. And when he got it, he says, "Hey, this thing doesn't spin right. It only spins, a couple times." I'm like, "Yeah, it's unbalanced. Did you not see didn't you see the video? You kept on, I wasn't going to sell this thing, but you kept on asking me about it, so I sold it." And he says, "Yeah, I kind of saw it, but I wanted to jump on it before somebody else got it."
Oh, so he's just one of these people that are just obsessive, and I can't, risk it. I can't risk it. Well, that's
exactly. So what ended up happening with that, but I would say that was a good interaction, because what happened is I said, "Look, I'm sorry you're unhappy with it. If you want to return it, I'll refund your money. That's fine. Return it, I'll refund it." He says, "No, look, you've been very honest with me. I really like it. I just want it to spin better. Is there anything I can do?" I said, "There is nothing you can do. That was my first attempt. You got the first one. It was a one-off. But what I will do for you is let me think about this. I'm going to make you another one. That one was bronze. I'll make you one out of stainless steel, and I will make it better." And he says, "You know what? That's great. That's fine." So I made him, and it took me a while to figure out exactly how to make it so that the center of gravity would be right at the center of the mass of that part. I made the second one. It actually had dual bearings. It was a little bit of a production. He paid for the shipping. I shipped it to him. He goes, "Fantastic. I love it. It's perfect." And that was the moment where I learned how to take something that was asymmetrical. Didn't matter. The shape no longer became important. The shape was irrelevant. If you look at all these spinners, and I know this is kind of weird talking about it now that the fat is gone, but if you look at them, they're all symmetrical because it's easy. Getting at something symmetrical to balance is easy.
Right.
And people like to do easy things, and easy things are easy to do. So when I realized that I could take any object of any size, of any shape, didn't matter.
Even my Stormtrooper?
I could take your Stormtrooper, but it'd be hard to spin that between your fingers. But yeah, so I could take any of that and find the center of gravity and make it so it would spin well. And that spawned the Spider-Man, the Flash. I did a Superman one. It was all based on the same. I did one with the skull for Shogun Jimmy's Skull Challenge. Did a skull spinner, and if you look at that one is actually way off, and the center of the bearing is actually in the eye. So that one was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was badass. I remember.
So it all came from that. It all came from that one client who jumped on the gun without knowing what he was getting, and he was very nice. He spent a good amount of money getting it shipped and all that. He was in Hong Kong, and he was very nice and very polite, and we had a very good back and forth, and I was very happy to explore that idea even more. But that was it. It was that moment where I learned something new, how to do that, and then that spawned more and better stuff.
Okay, so I want to get to, just to let the folks out there know what I want to. We've kind of touched on Star Wars a bit, but I want to talk about that model that you created. But before you have this ship, the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, that you reproduced, but like heavy duty, like this thing is like you could shoot at it, and so we'll talk about that. Do you have a picture of it on your Facebook or somewhere that I can grab it from?
Yes, I think it's on my Facebook. I know it's for sure on the I like to make stuff page. I've not got it in there.
I'm gonna search for it under your name, and when I find it, we'll get. But so we want to talk about these things that Ray has been building lately. But before we leave the spinner situation, something happened to Ray at some point, where his design got ripped off, and it started appearing everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So this is a guy that comes across this thing that he's created and finds that people are super interested in, American business, small business, and he's found this thing, and then all of a sudden, bam, here comes the wolves to try to snatch that glory of that time, and so so it was your design. Tell us what happened, and in the meantime,
Sure.
I'm going to search for the.
Sure. So this happened quite by surprise, and it was disheartening. I felt terrible because I think of myself as a regular guy. I know people look at me and they see all these tools and all the stuff I do, and they might have a different idea. But to me, I'm just a regular guy like anybody else. I've got a little shop. The fact that the majority of the stuff that I make is a little bit different scale. To me, the scale doesn't mean anything. It'll be a little tiny fidget spinner, or a 10,000-pound machine. It doesn't really matter, or a rocket launcher, or a drone launcher, 40-foot long drone launcher. The scale doesn't matter to me. To me, they're all the same. So I'm just a regular guy. To me, I'm making stuff, just plugging away. I got commissioned by a benefactor that wanted to see this 9-gear spinner, and I create this design that I slaved over for about 2 months, through all the versions, all the prototyping, all the experiments, all of it. Slaved over it for 2 months, and I put it out. So because at that time people were just absorbed into this idea that this industrial mechanical, people refer to it as mechanical kinetic sculpture. That's how they looked at it. It had 52 individual parts in it, and it worked flawlessly and smooth. And before the first client actually received it in his hands, I was contacted by someone who says, "Hey, they are about to release this from China, a copy of your." This was a Chinese individual who looks at a lot of Chinese websites, which I don't do. And as a matter of fact, he ended up calling me Gear Uncle. He called me Gear Uncle. A very nice gentleman. He says, "Look, they're about to come out with this pirated." They call them pirated copies of your design, and as a Chinese person, I find this offensive. But there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it. But I just wanted to let you know. And he let me know, and sure enough, I saw these. They were going through several design iterations, and it was being copied by more than one company. So if you knew what you were looking at, you can clearly see these versions that were markedly different from each other and from the original. And they started showing up on Amazon, on eBay, on any and every site. What really got me is that YouTube would advertise the clones on my video. So my video for the 9-gear, underneath it had, "Hey, here's where you can get a pirated copy of something else."
That is amazing that you are the creator of this, like literally the creator of this. Mm-hmm. In this case, Javi, I can say literally because literally it's true that because Javi doesn't like, you know how people use literally too
all the time,
too freely,
literally too much.
Yeah, and that totally upsets him. So, but in this case, I can say literally. And to see that in your own act, it's just freaking crazy.
It is crazy, and honestly, I felt deflated. I felt like, how could this happen? I'm just a guy in this little state in a little shop. What do I have that the Chinese want so bad that they got to steal it? And I did a 20-minute long rant on that. Did a whole video on it, and it's funny because people commented on that video, and most of the not all, but most of the comments were like, "Too bad for you, boo-hoo, go to cry to somebody else." Basically, that's what people were saying. They don't understand when you slave over a creation or a design, and really it was slaving. It was 2 months worth of solid work after hours on my own time. Without sleeping, trying to tweak this thing in because I can't interfere with the production of shop work and shop time. So I always did it on my own time. So literally it was slaving over it, and people just didn't see it as a problem. Intellectual property doesn't mean anything. The fact that you are the creator, irrelevant. The fact that they ripped it off from you, who cares? They're making it cheaper, and that's all we care about. Clearly, not everyone had that feeling, but a lot of people did. The whole thing felt almost surreal. How could this be? How could this be happening to me? This is weird. How could it be happening? The 9 gear was the first one that they copied. They then copied every single version of every gear spinner I ever made. So they made clones of all of them, including the more recent one, which is the gear cube. So the gear cube is a cube with 4 gears on the side that spins, and they all interact, and all the gears spin around each other, and the whole thing spins on its own axis. So.
Sterling Davis has just asked, how did they get the design?
All they need is a photograph. They don't need drawings. They don't need a sample. From photographs, they have become very good at copying. And the way you get good at copying is that you're not good at creating. You don't know how to make something from scratch, how to innovate an idea, how to have that seed of a concept or be creative. But you get very good at being able to copy things. In China, they have entire cities.
What's worse, though, is that they're looking at it not from even an artistic, oh, that's cool, because, in general, you see a chair, they're looking at it from flooding the market. Oh, this is going to be a thing, a trend, so let's snatch that, and then they flood the market, and then the one that originated it gets left out in the cold.
Yep.
So to add insult to injury, there's the flooding of that, of the market with the copy, and then you get, so yeah, I see.
Yeah, but here's the weird, I would say the weird quirk in the whole thing. You would think, well, the clones are coming out so inexpensively that they're going to take your market share. And in one way, I suppose they did, but my market share wasn't the low end of the market. They're very expensive, and I put all of them together myself, and they all get fine-tuned, and what you get is a carefully crafted machine, made and assembled by the guy who's selling it to you. You don't get that from Chinese created objects. And for some people, that is more important. They want the original. They appreciate the effort of creativity and the perseverance and brow sweat.
Look, exactly that. It's like you can go into a record store. When you go into a record store, you'd see the posters, right, sitting there, and then you'd mix with the rock and roll posters. You'd have like a Van Gogh or a Picasso, a guitarist, the Blue Period and stuff, and you could go for that for $5.99. You can't purchase the original. There's always going to be a distinction. You can't.
Yeah.
So there's the copy and there. So there's that saving grace as well. You are the originator, period.
Yeah. So, and that's what ended up happening. Before that, I refused to send anything to China for this reason. I didn't want to sell something to China and then have it mass produced. But the cat was out of the bag. They were already making it. And so there was really no reason not to send any to China, because they're already selling them on Amazon and eBay and DHgate and Alibaba. You name the website, they were selling copies of my spinners.
Yeah.
So the gentleman who had originally told me about it, the one that called me Gear Uncle, I suspect that he did that because he's much younger, and clearly I am not. So he, as a gesture of respect, referred to me as Gear Uncle.
Yeah.
So he said, "Look, we know it is." He says, "You know, these pirated versions, pirate copies are being made, but I don't care about that. I want the original. That's what I want, and I want to buy 10." So I sold him, and I shipped him 10, which, for those who are curious, you could go to the website. It is no insignificant amount. I sent him 10 of them. He paid for them all up front. PayPal, of course, took a big chunk out of that, but he paid for them all up front, and I shipped him 10. And when they got it, he was thrilled, because I think he was reselling them. He was part of a group of those individuals that only want original things. They're not interested in the $400 Rolex knockoff. They're interested in the $50,000 original Rolex or the $100,000 Rolex. They're not interested in any knockoff of anything. And so I got lucky with that. Well, it turned out that the Chinese market was the biggest consumer of my most expensive gear spinners. I ended up sending the vast majority to China, and they paid full price. They weren't haggling. They just said, "Yeah, we got to have it," and that was the end of it. And a lot of them ended up being repeat customers. So, and what did it is the clones. The fact that these counterfeits came out made them aware that such a thing existed, and they started looking for the real thing, which was a weird thing.
They're used to that, right?
They're very used to that. They know when they see something that's made in China that it is automatically a copy. Let's go find the real thing. It's out there somewhere.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's JP. Is there any questions or anything that you?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I've got written down. The first thing I've got to say is I've got to let you know that Julian Martinez says that he's in Baltimore.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, I had to tell you that. OJ's Woodworking says, how big is Ray's shop and home shop?
All right. That's easy. The home shop is about 172 square feet. It is 9 foot by 17 or 9 foot by 19 feet. The shop, the work, quote unquote, where I work, is approximately 30,000 square feet. It's a campus that has 4 buildings on it. Where you see the water jet a lot, that's in a building unto itself. There's the main CNC shop, and then there's I have a video of the most recent building, which is about 5,000 square feet, which is the fabrication shop, which is where the new milling machine had to go because it wouldn't fit anywhere else. It was the biggest machine we've got, and the only place that was even open was that building, because the main CNC floor has a bridge crane that goes across it, and you couldn't get it under the bridge crane.
I haven't seen that video yet, by the way.
Okay. I guess it's kind of cool to see a 70,000-pound machine get lifted like it's nothing.
Well, you do. I don't know if you do, but in every video, you let the person watching know what's going on. You give people. It's not like you're watching something happening and there's no information. You give the placement of what's going on and stuff. So it's always fun.
Yeah, I
you
like
do that in this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I do it on this. A lot, for this kind of video, I usually have a little 30-second intro. I show the thing, and then I might have a little cap, just capping it off at the end of what happened. only because I was not there. I was not involved in any part of it other than the filming. You know, let the professionals handle it. The crane service. It looks like a big crane, but that's not their biggest crane. They have another size that's twice that size, bigger. So they didn't even have to bring the big crane to do that. And it's hard to tell, but in the video, you see our two crews. The crane crew, all they do is they pick it up and they put it down. That's it. That's all a crane do. That's all a crane crew does. And for that service, I think it was about $5,000. All they do is they pick it up and they put it down, and then that's all. That's it. You pay them to do that. That is all the crane crew will do. The riggers, which actually move the equipment, they, once it comes off, they take control of it and they'll bring it into the building and put it exactly where you want it. And if you're like, oh, you know what, that left side needs to move an inch this way, or we need to bump it over a half inch that way, that's what they do, and that's what they will do until you are happy. Then they'll set it down.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I've actually got a question now. A few people out in the chat may not actually know. You actually made a 6-lad sign for Eloy. What was all that about?
That was a milestone. Can't remember. I think it might have been the 5,000 or the 10,000 subscriber milestone on my channel. I don't remember which one it was. And I wanted to do something because I did one at 3,000 on YouTube, and as far as I'm concerned, it was a disaster. There are people that are doing nothing but going on YouTube and searching for giveaways. That's all they do. They're searching giveaways. They don't watch your videos. They don't care about your channel. They're just going through to look for whatever is for free, and that's what ended up happening. I gave away I think it was a Craftsman 1960s era pistol grip sander, and somebody got it and they said, oh yeah, I'm going to give it to my grandma. There is no grandma that's going to be able to hold on to the sander and actually sand with it because it was so powerful. So ever since then, I said, you know what? I'm going to offer this next one to this community that we call, the I Like to Make Stuff group. And I said, you know what? I don't want to choose. Here's what I'm going to do. You guys decide who gets it. And the community decided that Eloy was going to get this custom-made sign. And of course, Eloy had to pick something that would be very difficult to make into a sign.
Which was, of course, his bearded logo, wasn't it?
Yep.
Skull logo, Skull edition.
Yeah, I'm always throwing a wrench into everything. If it's a fidget spinner, I have to make it into like an action figure. Why can't I just stick to normal?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have had something like the Macromona sign that you done.
Yeah, so I did that one before that. Yeah, it could have been something nice and easy, but no. and the Macromona sign is for those of you who don't know, he put out a request for somebody to make the shaft on his big bandsaw. Beautiful big log cutting slabbing bandsaw, but he needed the main drive shaft made. And I said, yeah, well, I'll make that for you. For some, that looks like a big shaft, but that's, by comparison, it's a tiny shaft compared to what we do. And I said, yeah, I'll make that for you. Not a big deal. I made it for him, made a video. He actually plugged it in one of his videos, and it did very well. And every time I was looking at his videos for his updates for the big bandsaw, I'm like, you know what? That saw's naked. That's a naked bandsaw. It needs a little something. And so I pulled down the logo from his website and just designed a little sign for him. And I didn't even tell him I was doing it. I just sent it. And I think he was a little surprised when he got it. And it sits on his bandsaw now.
That's awesome.
And of course, yeah. And once I did that, I'm like, you know what? That'd be kind of cool to do a giveaway for somebody in the group. And
enter the beard.
Yeah, enter the beard. And you were overwhelmingly volunteered by the group to receive the sign.
Yeah, dude, that was freaking an honor on many levels.
And to date, I think that was the most complicated one with all the layers in it, and of course the level of detail. And it was it perfect? No, it wasn't perfect, but I think all in all, it came out all right.
Dude, it's bad. I'll tell you what. You sat there and showed me. I was embarrassed because you showed me the graphics of the program that you used to, and the layers and stuff and the whole thing. So I put you through hell, dude.
Yeah, because every layer has to be designed independent of the other layers.
Yeah, there's a whole story behind that. You can see the videos and stuff. Ray's got a video of it, and then I've got a video of unboxing and all that. There's a whole story. I mean, we have all these connections and stories. It's what I always mention. So they're there to be viewed. Next, JP.
That's it now, mate, for the time being.
Okay, so I want to ask you one other question, and then two more things. Tell us about this latest build that you did. Why'd you do that? I mean, why did that? Talk to us about the Star Wars Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, that video is about a year in the making.
And I'll show it while we.
Sorry, I've got a picture here.
You got it? Okay. So JP will show it while you tell us about it.
Sure. That video is about a year in the making. My friend Jose from City Aperture, he's got a YouTube channel that he's been playing around with for the last year or two. He had made one out of wood, and he said, I got the files. If you want the files, you can have them. And he made his, I think, was maybe no more than 6 inches or so long. It was made out of wood, and I had these files for a year, and I've been playing around with them. And what am I going to do this? Make this out of? Should I make it out of, thin material, thin aluminum, or should I make it out of plywood? I mean, I'm not sure what I'm going to make this out of. And then the Han Solo movie comes out, and I'm like, you know what? Now's the time. I gotta make this thing. And I decided to make it out of aluminum, and I made it in typical fashion, a little bit extreme. So it ends up being, I think, just under 20 inches long and weighs about 21 pounds of aluminum. And I used about 3/4 of a sheet of aluminum to be able to produce this thing. There's maybe 200 pieces in there. It's like a puzzle, like those wooden puzzles that used to make as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still have it on my desk at work. I'm not sure what to do with it, if I should donate it or hang it from the ceiling or.
Well, in the video, you did mention that you calculated at the end the pricing for,
Oh yeah.
And you said that realistically, this is an insane amount, and then you went through the process of pricing the whole thing, and it turns out that this is way of an expensive.
Yes. Forgetting my time, my actual dollars out of pocket for this project was $400 that I purchased in material to be able to make it, which is a tiny fraction when you think of the amount of machine time and labor that went into it. So yeah, it was an interesting project, and I wouldn't do it again because it was a little too expensive. But the few dollars that the YouTube channel generates, I use to do these kind of things. So at the end, it's a net zero kind of thing. And so it was fun. It was interesting. A lot of work involved in it. I wouldn't necessarily do it again, but I like the experience of making something once. And I've made it, and it looks. Is it perfect? It's not a perfect thing, but it's not bad. I think it came out okay.
Damn, dude, you're not bad as like other people. So let me ask you,
because I know all the defects. I know all the little things. There's never a perfect project, and you are so intimately involved with that project that you know every little thing that went wrong. Every time there's a little defect, you know them all.
Yeah, I hear that. We've interviewed JP and I. Well, JP, Doc, and I, because Doc has come on 2-3 times. JP.
Who's that?
As a stand-in?
Who? Sorry.
You're off somewhere else. No, so I didn't finish that. So we interview so many people, and makers always mention that you just said, where, you know, I see the defects, I know, you know, this and that. Like, that's a common thread.
Yeah, yeah. They're their own personal critic.
Yeah, we can't escape that for some reason, you know.
Well, and, you know, and when you think about it, that I think that's really the mark of craftsmanship, because you have to shoot high. You have to shoot as high as you possibly can, because there will be defects, there will be errors, there will be mistakes that happen, there will be little goof ups.
I shot high with my the stormtrooper.
But that was a whole different thing.
I was thinking outside the box, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
So if you shoot low, if you're like, oh yeah, that's good enough. Yeah, no, that's good enough. That's good enough. If you're shooting that low, then by the time you're done,
it's
and
crap.
all the other, yeah, exactly. So if you're not shooting real high to make sure that whenever you do have a little thing, it's not a big thing. You know, it's okay to have a lot of little things because no one will ever see them. But if you're shooting low and you get a little thing, it's not a little thing, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what that is. That's the mark of craftsmanship. And if you're shooting high, as you should be, and you're always shooting high, you do get these little things that happen, and no one ever sees them but you.
Well, let me ask you this question. Any words of advice for people wanting to be makers, create, inspiration? Just from what would you tell someone to give them, you know, some motivation, inspiration? What would be Ray's words of advice?
I would say that probably the most important thing is get started. A lot of people fear mistake. They fear failure. And I think that's the problem. You're going to fail. Don't worry about it. Guarantee it. You're going to fail. So let's get that right out of the way from the beginning. You're going to fail. Get over it. You have to get started. When I first started, I was a lot of failures, and everybody will tell you the same thing. When they first started, they made a lot of mistakes. They ruined a lot of things. It cost them money and materials. You know, everybody says the same thing. So the fear of failure can be your greatest enemy. So forget about it. You're gonna fail. Accept it now, and get started. Do not hesitate. You can always make more money. You can always make more things. You can always get more material. You cannot get more time. You cannot buy the time. You can't go back and retrieve the time you've wasted. So the time is the most precious. Forget about the objects. Forget about the material. Forget about the money it costs you. Forget about all that. The time is the most precious thing, and you're never going to get that back. So you got to take advantage of the time, and there's no time to start. No better time to start than right now. You got to take advantage of that time. Start now. If you've got an idea, for example, the boat that I built in my living room, that day I said, you know what, I'm going to build a boat. It was that day. The idea sure had been kind of, rolling around, but on that day, I woke up and I said, yeah, today is the day I'm going to build this boat. I went to the lumber yard, and by the end of the day, I had a fully assembled frame. The hesitation is the enemy. Fear of failure is the enemy. You got to get started, and you'll learn along the way, and you'll deal with those problems as they come.
Awesome. That's freaking excellent advice. Yeah, I agree to that. What do you think, JP?
Yeah, without a doubt. 100%.
All right, so let me ask you, Ray, did you enjoy being on the show?
Absolutely. I've caught about 60% of these. I haven't seen them all, but I've caught about 60%, and I think a couple of them I've been able to catch live. So I'm wondering in the background, when is EJ going to ask me to get on this show? When is that call going to come? Yeah.
So do you know what the next question is going to be?
I'll tell you what, Ray. I've been telling him since day one. But
have you?
He was kind of like, nah, he can wait.
Well, so do you know what the next question is going to be then?
I don't. I have not had the opportunity to see everything to the end. So it's going to be a surprise to me.
Will you come back and see us?
Absolutely, anytime.
Dude, awesome. Listen, I want to just, I appreciate you coming on. You've been a big inspiration for me. Just every video, like I've said, every video that I go to, just I'm inspired. I come out of there thinking, wow, you know, thinking bigger than what I might, you know, from before. And so you're very inspiring. And for the folks out there, I have all the links for Ray down in the description, along with JP, myself, Harneal Media, which makes websites for makers and for makers by makers. So there's that down there as well you can check out. Ray, are there any final words that you'd like to?
No, I think I talked too much actually. No, I think it's a great interview. I'm glad to have done this. I'm glad you asked me to come, and anytime you want to do this again, you know, feel free to ask.
Yeah, we're gonna have baseball cards. We're gonna have trading cards. Like there's gonna be a whole series of trading cards. And I'm working on that now. It's gonna be front and back, and the back's gonna have like you know, like
stats.
the stats. Yeah. And so I'll be reaching out to you, not just yet because I've got to do the first 10. I'm gonna work the batches out, you know. And so I'll reach out to you for that.
They're gonna be like laser etched on titanium.
No, this is okay. So
that's what you should do for the hosts. Me, you, and Doc should have titanium cards.
See, now you got, so my original. I guess that's part of the thinking big. See, my original idea is to go retro because obviously this is like a retro. And if you see the art that I do for all the the shows, it's always retro. So my idea for the cards is something retro, grungy, back in the day type thing, you know. And now you guys are hitting me with this titanium stuff. Well, it could be season 2. You're gonna be in season. I don't know. I'm gonna have to make a break from season 1 to season 2, so that the collection stays with a certain number. But whatever. There's that. I do a write up. I did a write up of you recently, but I'll do a write up for the show that we've just done. And also, what else was I gonna say? There was something. Oh, there's a private group that I'm gonna add you to. There's not a lot of talking, but it's for previous guests of the show.
Oh, the secret group.
Oh, it's yeah. It's
secret group, yeah.
So thanks a lot, dude. I appreciate it, JP.
I'm gonna plug my YouTube channel again because I'm getting closer to 2,000 subscribers. So please subscribe because I need it. It's JP Woodwork. That's all I'm gonna say. So,
all right. Yeah. So go subscribe. You guys all know JP. If you're not subscribed to JP, I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, you know. Check out everybody's links. You guys out there, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Next week, we're gonna have Tony Rouleau here, and let's see what he's all about. I can't believe
the man, the myth, the sexiness.
Yeah. So have a good night. Have a great week, guys.
You
Thank
too.
you for coming in.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
You too.